the evening. Vitalik, I think you should probably take a drink of water. Oh, fantastic. No, actually, that was my one. I realised I took yours, you took mine, and I didn't want to stop you because it was going so well. Guys, we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A now. Yeah, I thought so. I'm asking my question first, by the way. And my question, by the way, is a non-technical question, Vitalik, if I hope you don't mind. But, and this is my question. You talk a lot about the changes in the technical side of things. I want to know about the changes in society. My mother phoned me up a few months ago and asked me to invest in Bitcoin. I said, Mother, where did you hear about the word Bitcoin? And she said, oh, it was a TV show called Coronation Street. And suddenly I realized that actually this change that we all want, this adoption, what are the social challenges that we have to kind of overcome in order to see mass adoption for this?
I definitely think that it's important for us as a community to be striving for the right kinds of adoption, and sometimes even being willing to actively repel the wrong kinds of adoption. So, I personally kind of try to take that responsibility seriously when I even just publicly say things on Twitter like, hey guys, these coins could drop to zero anytime. I think it's definitely important for us to focus on applications first, because the problem with focusing on speculation, right, is that it really oversells the story in the beginning, because it's like, oh, these coins are awesome because all my friends just got these coins and they went up by a factor of 5. But really, we know that these coins are not going to go up by a factor of 5 every year, because that's a mathematical impossibility. So it's important, and also speculation by itself is ultimately a zero-sum game, right? If we earn a huge amount of money because of weird magic fairy dust that doesn't correspond to the real economy, and then because of that, we buy more Lambos, well, that's consuming resources in the world, which means Lambos become more scarce, which means other people can't buy Lambos, which means we're really stealing it. So, whereas if we actually, contribute to society and actually build things that are useful to people, then we don't end up doing that, right? So, I think, some of the ways in which we kind of have tried doing this is, first of all, just caring about things like usability and developer friendliness, and being kind of usable for building more interesting things. Also, we should talk more about the kinds of things that we want to see built, and also talk more broadly about the kind of broader vision for society that we want to see achieved, and kind of not in a paternalistic way, because that's totally not the ethos of the space, but just in terms of here are examples of things that we want to empower people to do, but ultimately this is a general purpose programming language, which means that what is going to happen is what you make of it.
Awesome, thank you so much, Vitalik. I've got my first question all the way at the back here. And by the way, I'm going to share your presentation with my mother, so she knows exactly what all this is about. Okay, first one, here we go.
Hi Vitalik, thank you for the talk today, and I have a question. Knowing that you hope that the Ethereum project will be able to progress without your leadership, how do you see the challenges for this type of governance, where we have to hope that the future core developers will be taking right decisions for the protocol? How can you avoid a situation where these are other malicious, influence people, or maybe less competent people taking decision? How do we avoid the situation where it leads to stagnation and no progress in the blockchain space?
Yeah, I definitely think that governance is a difficult problem, and I definitely think that we've seen a lot of cautionary tales in the crypto space about what bad governance can end up leading to. I think it's important to not discount the importance of norms and culture. So by norms and culture, I both mean norms about what we think the platform is fundamentally about, and which properties we're willing to most willing to sacrifice other things to keep if we have to. And also just culture in terms of how people engage in governance, how people engage in intellectual discourse. I think that if you try to sort of write out the governance algorithm mechanism for Ethereum versus Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, and all of these other communities, in many cases, the differences are fairly small. Like the place where we actually do see the differences is kind of in the beliefs that are common inside of these communities. And so I think as people who have kind of positions of influence in the beginning stages of a community, we have a responsibility to steward it in the right direction and to promote the kinds of ideas and the kinds of values that will lead to kind of better decisions down the road. So just a couple examples of this would probably be, like, one is even just something like the norm of not emphasizing the price all the time. Like that's not just a kind of community management norm, it's also a governance norm, because it means that the cryptocurrency itself is less, or the blockchain itself is less likely to kind of optimize for the price of its cryptocurrency rather than for utility. Things like being willing to hard fork, I think, is important, because, like, realistically, soft forks are, well, if you want to use soft forks to bring the blockchain, you can, and ultimately, if soft forks become contentious, that's just the war of the miners, and miners are just not a very good governance mechanism. There's norms about, another example is just, we were fairly kind of loud about our goal of switching to proof of stake and implementing sharding at some point down the future, and we talked about this all the way since 2014 and 2015. And I think just having the kind of developers at the core of a community, even just talk about what the vision is more earlier on, has a good effect, because it ensures that, you know, people are on the same page. If there are disagreements, then you see the disagreements earlier. If the disagreements are irreconcilable, people have a chance to split off earlier before it becomes more bloody and things like that. So there's a bunch of small things that you can do.
Vitalik, does this work? Okay, cool. You outlined some of the morally desirable social or societal reasons for mainstream adoption, but do you think that there are also very clear economic reasons why enterprises would want to reduce payroll costs by using blockchains to reliably systematize their operations on private blockchains? And
Sure.
if so, what makes you think that mainstream adoption of blockchains will have anything to do with decentralization rather than automation?
Sure. So, I would first of all say that there definitely is a category of application where, like, there is automation and digitization happening, and the automation and digitization is in many cases necessary and good. But even though it's called a blockchain, it's really not a blockchain, right? Like, I've seen a bunch of these projects in, like, different parts of the world. There's you know, like IBM's blockchain, which is like where all the intellectual property is actually owned by one company. There was a project in China that I saw a while back where it was a private blockchain with 7 nodes that were all operated by the same company, and so on and so forth. So the challenge, like, basically, there are cases where centralization is okay and where he wants to switch from kind of paper centralization to digital centralization, and that's totally good and fine. But I think that to a large extent that is a kind of separate space from the space of using public blockchains for things, benefits that have to do with basically shared ledgers, decentralization, kind of open data, and open state, and things like that. And I would say that you really do need to, and part of the reason why I was making this presentation is that you do need to think much more clearly about kind of what is the specific gain that you are trying to go after, right? Like, what is the gain that you're looking at from building it on a blockchain versus building it on something else? And where the something else is usually a centralized server. And if the blockchain really is just a centralized server and you're doing this to upgrade from paper, then it's very possible that's a really great thing and you should just do that. And you might not even need a blockchain use case. There's also, if you're looking at like why to use a blockchain instead of using instead of using computers, then even if it's a consortium chain, and like I do think there is a substantial space for consortium chains, there's like the benefits that you're getting do not have to do with technical costs, right? Technically speaking, blockchains are kind of per transaction, per byte, much less efficient than centralized systems. And so the benefits that you're getting are not from cutting technical costs, they're from cutting social costs. They're from increasing technical costs to cut social costs, which is honestly a good trade-off, because if in the last 70 years, technical costs have dropped by a factor of 1 trillion, but costs of hiring people have gone up. But like you need to be explicit about what you're going after.
Awesome. Next question.
Hi, when I was at DevCon, I heard this really interesting concept called plantoids. So what do you think about like the thesis that maybe the killer application for blockchain would be for sentient digital beings than human beings, and like on the future?
I guess, what is a sentient digital being? Like, does it have conscious experience? Like, if I kick it, will it feel pain?
Maybe.
Like, that does, I think with plantoids specifically, it's definitely more of an art project at this point, but like, in the long run, if you start talking about sentient digital beings, and that's basically strong AI, and I mean, strong AIs will definitely have use cases for blockchains, though I do think that those two are kind of relatively separate spaces at this point. Okay.